Sandra Bullock's car accidentally hit a modest sedan carrying a couple. Faces startled and quick apologies erupted, but when Sandra Bullock stepped out to check on the couple, she noticed something most people would have missed. Bruises, fear, silence that said more than words ever could. And in that moment, what began as an inconvenience became a mission, because what Sandra did next wasn't just kind, it was heroic. Have you ever seen something that told you someone needed help, but they couldn't say it out loud? Tell us about your experience in the comments section. The sun was beginning its slow descent, painting soft amber strokes across the quiet suburban streets. Sandra Bullock sat behind the wheel of her SUV, her hair loosely tied back. Her manager sat in the passenger seat, reading out a chain of updates and answering questions. Sandra nodded along, fielding updates about a pending script. Both of them had just wrapped a day of meetings and script discussions. Sandra Bullock, though calm in appearance, was visibly distracted. Her fingers drummed lightly against the steering wheel, eyes flicking between the road and the calendar alert flashing on her dashboard. Her voice was warm but distant as she responded to each update. She wasn't rushing, but her mind was elsewhere. "What about the Foundation's dinner?" Sandra asked. The Foundation's dinner wasn't just another glamorous stop on Sandra Bullock's calendar. It was her heart project, held annually to raise funds for women's shelters across the country. It was born from a place deep within her, one that understood pain, quiet endurance, and the desperate need for second chances. Little did she know, fate was about to add one more name to that story. Okay, so we've got a wardrobe meeting rescheduled to Friday, and the Foundation dinner is confirmed for the 25th, her manager Dan said without looking up. Sandra Bullock gave a half smile, eyes on the road. "You know, for someone who hates crowded rooms, I sure end up in a lot of them." Dan chuckled. "Because you light them up. People like being near that glow." The two laughed as they coasted through a peaceful residential area, rows of trees gently swaying, kids riding bikes, and dogs barking faintly in the distance. Just as she turned into a four-way intersection, Sandra's gaze flickered toward her screen for half a second, just enough time. Dan glanced up and stiffened slightly. "Sandra, car 3 o'clock. Sandra turned her head just in time to see a modest white sedan rolling into the intersection. She hit the brakes, but not fast enough. Bump. A low thud rang out as the front of her car tapped the panel of the other vehicle. The SUV jolted to a stop. Her heart raced. She instinctively leaned back in her seat for a second, hands gripping the wheel. Sandra's heart skipped, her eyes wide. Her manager looked up. "Are you okay?" Without answering, Sandra quickly turned off the ignition and stepped out of the car. The door on the driver's side of the modest sedan opened first. A man stepped out, mid-40s, sharply dressed but with a tension in his posture that felt unnatural. His eyes scanned the minor damage, then darted towards Sandra. "Are you kidding me?" he muttered under his breath. But Sandra wasn't ready to create a scene. "Excuse me, mister," Dan called out to the upset man as he stepped out as well. Just then, the husband directed his tone toward Dan. "We need to exchange insurance information. Is she your client?" Dan nodded politely. "Yes, I'm her manager. Let's get this sorted quickly." Meanwhile, Sandra Bullock went straight to the passenger side where a woman sat, her hair neatly tied back, eyes downcast, hands trembling slightly. Sandra gently tapped on the window. The woman hesitated, then rolled it down. "Are you all right?" Sandra asked, voice warm. Yes, I think so," the woman answered softly, avoiding eye contact. Her smile was forced. She nodded. Sandra offered her hand. "Let me help you out." As the woman stepped out, Sandra's gaze dropped, and there they were. Faint bruises ringed her wrists like fading bracelets. Another just above the elbow, disguised under pale sleeves, but not hidden well enough. Something in Sandra's chest pulled tight. "You're sure you're okay?" she asked again, more gently now. The woman nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes?" Thank you, Sandra's breath caught for a second. With what she saw, she knew that the woman was fighting to survive something or someone. The woman's eyes instinctively darted toward her husband, who was now in a heated but composed discussion with Sandra's manager, talking about insurance and responsibility. His tone was sharp, impatient, controlling. Sandra masked her reaction, smiling politely, nodding to the woman. "I'm really sorry for the scare," she said warmly. "Let's make sure everything's all right." And at that moment, she made a silent decision. She walked back to her SUV. Her Her hands were shaking slightly as she opened the glove box. She pulled out a notepad and scribbled quickly, "If you need help, call this number. I can help. You're not alone." She folded the note, placed it inside her palm, and turned back toward the woman who now stood near her husband but slightly apart, her hands loosely crossed over her chest. "Like I said, we'll take care of the damage," Dan said, his voice calm. The husband cut him off, eyes darting towards Sandra as she walked towards them. "Yeah, well, it's always the ones who think they're better than everyone else who don't know how to drive," he snapped. His tone was slick, measured, but something in it coiled, a simmering condescension laced with something uglier underneath. Dan raised a hand gently. "Sir, let's keep this civil. No one's trying to avoid responsibility here." But the man's focus had shifted. He narrowed his eyes on Sandra. As the husband argued with Dan, Sandra took a walk toward the wife, her expression calm, composed, even kind. She didn't say a word. The woman stood near the open door of the sedan at the driver's side, eyes cast downward. Her husband's voice still echoed in the background, sharp and annoyed. Sandra moved gently. In her hand, folded so small was the note. She didn't hold it out. She didn't gesture. Instead, she simply reached down as though brushing a loose thread from the woman's hand, then placed the folded paper into the woman's palm. For just a second, the woman looked up. No words passed between them, but the look said everything. Sandra gave the faintest nod. A message passed in silence. "You're not alone." Dan's voice went just behind them. "We've got your contact. I'll follow up with the details. Really, there's no need for any more tension." The husband huffed something under his breath but kept his eyes on Dan, and in that brief moment of distraction, the wife quietly slid the note into her coat pocket. Sandra stepped back, calm, polite. Not a single person noticed what had just happened. Sandra and the man's wife stood there silently, and when their eyes met, it was only for a second, but it said everything. Gratitude, fear, hope. Finally, the husband took a step backward, voice lower now, but with a blade's edge. "We've got somewhere to be. This is just wasting our time." He gestured to his wife to get in the car, and in that moment, watching the way the woman flinched at her husband's voice, how she glanced quickly at him for approval before moving, how she instinctively rubbed her wrist as if remembering pain, Sandra knew her instinct was right. The bruises, the silence, the fear in her eyes, they all spoke louder than any scream ever could. What began as a simple fender bender just became something far more urgent. Have you ever seen a silent cry for help? If you believe one kind act can save a life, hit that like button. Behind the fragile smile she gave Sandra Bullock was a life breaking quietly behind closed doors. Before the bruises faded, new ones arrived, and Jeannie Darren had stopped trying to keep count long ago. At first it was occasional, an outburst, a slammed fist against the doorframe, or a thrown cup, always followed by an apology, a gift, a promise. But slowly, the space between rage and remorse began to disappear. The first time he struck her, it was open-handed. He had been drinking, said she embarrassed him in front of friends. The second time, it was her wrist, a hard grip that left purple bands for a week. He said she talked too much when he was tired. By the fifth time, there was no excuse anymore, just blames and bruises. "You make me feel this way," was the first. Then, "I wouldn't be like this if you weren't so damn stupid," followed by, "This is what you deserve." Jeannie believed her husband for a while because that's what trauma does. It whispers to you in your own voice. She started lying to friends, avoiding mirrors, mastering makeup. She smiled at PTA meetings, waved to neighbors, laughed at church potlucks, but inside she was sinking. Every time things didn't go the way he wanted, his fist did the talking. And when the first hit came close to her son, that's when the line was drawn. Not the children, never the children. So she became their shield. Every harsh word, she took it. Every accusation, she absorbed it. Every time his anger stirred, she stepped forward. She stopped counting the bruises, but never stopped protecting her children. The shield she became reached its breaking point on a fateful Tuesday evening. The light in the house was soft, golden. Her boys were in their room, drawing, whispering, playing quietly, as children of tension often do. She had just set the knife down after slicing tomatoes when she heard the front door creaking open. The boots, the gate, slow and deliberate. He was home, and he was angry. "What the hell happened to my torch?" Mr. Darren yelled. The air snapped. The torch, the old metal flashlight he kept near the door, now laid cracked in two across the floor. Jenny turned her head slowly, eyes widening. Her heart began to race, not wildly, but with grim familiarity. She walked quickly to the kitchen entrance, but stopped short in the hallway, just in time to hear his voice again. "Boys, get out here, now!" he roared. The boys hurried in from the bedroom, heads down. "Who broke it?" Mr. Darren asked his kids, pointing at the broken torch. "I dropped it," the older kid said softly. "Did your mother know?" Mr. Darren asked. The boys looked at each other, then the younger one nodded. Yes. The man said nothing, and that was worse than yelling. Jenny stepped back into the kitchen. She needed air. She needed a second to think. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the counter. She heard the bedroom door creak open, then slam, then nothing, but she knew what was coming. Seconds later, his voice echoed from the hallway, louder now. "You just let them break my things now? And you stand there and watch." He appeared in the doorway, eyes dark, jaw set tight like a brewing storm. "I was going to fix it," she said quietly. "It was just, shut your mouth. You don't fix anything. You don't teach them respect. And then you expect me to come home to this mess?" he said as he stepped closer, the air thick with tension. "You think I won't discipline them because of your soft little sob story? Let me tell you something. If you interrupt me when I deal with them, I swear to God, I'll make sure you feel it worse." He turned and marched down the hallway. Jenny stood frozen, hands trembling against the countertop. Tears fell before she could stop them. She knew exactly what would happen next. The hallway pulsed with tension as Mr. Darren stormed down it, belt already clenched in one hand. In the boys' room, the air turned electric with dread. The older son instinctively stepped in front of the younger. The door burst open and the storm arrived. "Look at this mess," he barked. "You little fools think this house is a playground?" He marched forward, towering over them. "You're pathetic. Can't even respect something simple, like staying out of trouble." His arm swung, the belt lashed across the older boy's back. The child shrieked, stumbling backward, eyes wide with terror. The younger one cried out, "Daddy, stop, please," as he backed into the corner. But Mr. Darren's rage only escalated. "Don't you dare cry like a little girl," he shouted at the younger one. "You want to act like a baby, I'll treat you like one." He struck again. The younger child ducked, but not fast enough. The belt glanced at his arm. He whimpered, clutching it, shaking uncontrollably. "Stupid, that's what you are, both of you," he snarled. "Ungrateful little rats. I feed you, I clothe you, and this is how you repay me." He pointed at the older one. "You think you're a man, huh? Hiding behind your mother every damn time. You're weak, just like her." Then he gave another strike, harder, more violent. From the kitchen, Janie Darren dropped the rag in her hand. The screams were too much. She ran toward the noise. Her bare feet slapped the floor as she rounded the corner into the boys' room. She slipped slightly and used her hand to support herself off the door frame. No! She threw herself between the belt and her son's. The leather caught her shoulder, but she didn't flinch. She gathered the children with her, shielding them with her body. "You don't touch them, not one more time." Her husband's face twisted with disbelief and fury. "So now you're a hero," he snarled. "This is your fault. You coddle them. You make them this soft. You're the reason they're weak." His voice rose to a shout, veins pulsing in his neck. "I'm the only one trying to raise them right while you sit here turning them into little emotional wrecks." She looked up at him, tears streaming, voice raw. "You're not raising them, you're breaking them." The belt came down again, this time across her back, then her arm. She cried out, but she didn't move because her children, terrified, trembling, were still under her arms. "You protect them now?" Mr. Darren spat. "Good, then you can take the beating for them." Several lashes landed on Jenny. She fell sideways, barely catching herself. He stood over her, chest heaving, belt in hand, lips curled with disgust. Then, without another word, he turned and stormed out of the room, door slamming behind him. Jenny laid there for a moment. The boys clung to her, both sobbing now. She whispered, "I'm here, I'm here." Her face bruised, her body throbbing. Later that night, while the boys slept curled against her in her bedroom, she got up and reached out into her coat pocket. Her fingers closed around it, the note. She unfolded it slowly and read silently. "If you need help, call this number. I can help. You're not alone." Then she reached for her phone immediately, and just like that, her choice for freedom was made. When she picked up the phone, she wasn't just calling a stranger, she was calling freedom. For years, she'd only whisper her pain to the walls, but on this night, someone was ready to hear and help her. The house was quiet, but it wasn't the sense of peace. It was an aftershock. Her boys laid curled on the bed, wrapped in the same blanket she used to dry their tears. Their breaths were uneven, even in sleep. Jenny stared at the number on Sandra's note, her eyes red and raw. Questions ran through her mind. What if he finds out? What if no one answers? What if I don't deserve help? But then she examined the bruises on her body, remembered her boy's scream and the belt. She dialed 1 ring, 2, 3. Hello? A familiar, warm, and calm voice. This is Sandra. Who's calling? Jenny's throat clenched. You left me a note after the accident. Her voice cracked. There was a pause. A breath. Are you safe right now? Sandra asked gently. Jenny tiptoed to the door and looked toward the hallway. He's asleep, she responded. And the children? Sandra asked again. They're with me, but we're not okay. I can't do this anymore. Jenny answered, her voice still shaky. Listen to me. You've already done the hardest part. You reached out. I have people. We can help you, but you have to trust me, okay? Text me your location. Sandra's voice changed instantly. There was a long silence at Jenny's end, then a whisper, okay? When the call ended, Sandra Bullock didn't wait. She stood up, phone still in hand, and dialed her assistant. I need secure transportation, quiet, unmarked, and a safe house. Tonight. Within hours, her team was in motion. A private security detail was dispatched to the safe house. A trusted driver placed on alert. Sandra Bullock contacted a network of domestic abuse specialists, attorneys, counselors, crisis response teams. No media, no leaks. This wasn't about publicity, it was about saving a life. Sandra Bullock didn't post a hashtag. She moved mountains in the dead of night. If you believe real heroes act when it matters most, hit that share button. Let's amplify stories that actually change lives. Sandra's team were up to the task. They executed a coordinated extraction without alerting Jenny's neighborhood and her abusive husband. Jenny quickly packed lightly, a single duffel bag, school clothes, documents, the kids' favorite toys. She woke the boys gently. Shh. We're going on a little trip. The older one blinked. Is Daddy coming? She smiled softly, swallowing her tears. Not this time. Just then, the hallway creaked. She froze, and then seconds later, she tiptoed to the door of Mr. Darren's bedroom and listened. Snoring, loud and deep, is all she heard. She went back and turned the lock on the boy's bedroom, just in case, and made her way to the front door. Every creak in the floorboard felt like thunder. Her heart pounded in her throat. She opened the door slowly. The van was waiting. Headlights off, engine quiet. Jenny and her boys were escorted to the van that waited outside Mr. Darren's apartment. The van returned to the safe house. Quiet, controlled, and protected. Phones turned off. Jenny and her boys' names scrubbed from hospital systems. They became ghosts, but for the first time, it felt like freedom. With Jenny safe, Sandra made her next call to a powerhouse legal team known for tearing down walls of silence. She personally funded the entire case. As investigators dug in, more stories surfaced. Former girlfriends, neighbors, and ex-mistresses testified that they too had suffered in silence under Mr. Darren's abusive control. For years, Mr. Darren hid behind charm. He was respected in the neighborhood. He smiled at church. He donated to local fundraisers. He shook hands with firm, confident warmth. But when the mask slipped, Sandra Bullock made sure the world saw everything. With mounting evidence, police arrived at Mr. Darren's door the next day. He was handcuffed in front of cameras, neighbors, and the same community that once respected him. Mr. Darren was made to stand before a judge. His bail denied. His charges stacked. His reputation obliterated. Justice wasn't just served, it was roared for. Weeks later, Sandra Bullock stood before a glittering crowd of donors at her annual foundation dinner. But this year, the air was different. A real story rang into the ears of the august audience. Jenny's story, her bruises, her escape, her rebirth, and then the light spotted the victim. Jenny stood beside Sandra, nervous but radiant. After Sandra's narrative, the crowd rose to their feet, tears, applause, and hope entwined. She was once a prisoner in her own home. Now she stood in the spotlight. Jenny didn't just survive. She became a symbol, a spark, a movement. During the dinner, Sandra Bullock learned Jenny was a public administration graduate forced to give up such a career by her abuser. Sandra made some calls inside the dinner hall without hesitation. A week later, Jenny was hired by one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the city. Her boys placed on full scholarships until college, a beautiful home in a safe neighborhood, a reliable car, and a support network that would never let her fall again were all the benefits that Sandra's foundation showered on Jenny. She didn't just walk away from the fire, she rose from it. Jenny's story reminded the world that you can reclaim your name, your life, your future. For more unique stories like this one, subscribe now. Don't hesitate to like and share this video with friends because the world needs the hope that this story gives.